Hi, everyone. My name's Kai. We're doing a little sesh on a Wednesday afternoon with 5 people. Those 5 people are Sam, Luca, I like that, Sam, Isabel, and Gabby. If you'd like to make a noise to indicate which one of those names applies to you, then you can do that if you want to, but I'm sure we'll figure it out if you don't want to. Anyone want to make a noise? Oh, I think someone's phone went off there.
I thought it was a cow, to be fair.
So we're being joined by a cow.
Go for a cow, go proper cow. Thank you.
No, go for a cow.
Go for it. Huh? What?
Moo.
Oh, go for a
Christ.
sheep then.
Not like
Okay.
cow in pain.
Cow giving. So we're being joined by Luca, who is a cow who's currently in labour. We'll update you at the end of the episode if the cow lives. But yeah, we got 2 yummy topics today. One of them is whether certain vegetables should be classed as fruit, and that's unanimous, so we're not going to talk about that. The first one is universal basic income, and it sounds so boring, but actually I think it's quite cool. Let's talk about income, guys.
That's one way to sell it, yeah. It's super boring.
Right, so on Instagram, I did some Polish people. Actually, no, hang on. I did some Instagram polls.
That's not bad.
So I asked 2 questions about universal income. The first one was simply, should we have universal income? 3 people said yes and 2 people said no. The interesting thing is that the second question I asked, do we want a society where we don't need to work? 0 people said yes and 8 people said no, which I think is quite interesting, and I think that's different to the first question. So I'll give a quick definition of what universal basic income is for the people who don't know. So it literally all 3 of the words mean a thing. So it's universal, so that means that everyone gets it, and there's no means test to decide whether or not you get it or to determine how much you get. Basic, which means that it's enough money to live and like pay rent, but not live like a frivolous life. And it's income, which means that it's not coupons, it's just cash in hand. So no sneaky things from supermarkets. So there's quite a few issues with it that people have with it. One of them is like financing it, and we'll go into that a little bit later because I think that moral and ethical things are a bit more interesting to start off with. So the purpose of universal basic income, well, one of the main purposes is that it means that if you're unemployed, it doesn't matter because you get approximately like £1,200 a month from the government just every day of your life, so that you don't need to work, and if you want to work then you can, but it's not going to penalise you like benefits can do, because sometimes if you are on benefits and then you start work you might receive less money, so it properly incentivises working. But that does mean, of course, like with benefits, that you could just vibe and never work. So the first question is, do we want to be in a society where we don't need people to work and they can just live and do what they want?
I was just going to say that I think if that were to happen, that just nobody works, wouldn't that really be like economically damaging? Unless, like the communities where everybody does, I don't know, maybe the garden work where they share the fruit and veg, but I feel like that would be almost impossible to achieve because it takes us back takes us back many generations of the advances that we've had. So I think it would be impossible to convince people to do that, and also for it just to work in like Yeah.
Are you thinking
So I'd
like?
say that
Ooh,
economically, it's not actually like.
okay. Are you thinking like? Because this is a separate thing that we will get onto in a bit, but like, are you thinking that? Because what I was thinking, because the purpose of it originally is to, it's like a kind of backstop for like a select few people who are unemployed, but it still gives an incentive for people to work. It's like, because you wouldn't really want to stay on it for too long because it's just the bare minimum and you can't really do very much. So it's not, so like everyone will still get the basic income, but everyone's still going to keep their jobs and stuff. So it's in addition to stuff rather than you just can't work kind of thing. So it just means that a select few might be able to just never work. So it's the necessity to work, because right now it's arguable that you have to work in order to survive in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if there were to be this, that people should definitely be encouraged to work on a job and work, because if people have this and then just nobody works, then obviously that would not be possible to financially, like, if people just decided, well, we get this anyway, so we may as well not work. But I think in general, well, actually, I don't know, but I feel like I want to work. Like, I want to like be able to go into the world and be able to get a job and everything. So it's I just think that economics it's like everyone. Sorry, I cut off. I think.
The
Okay.
last bit went a bit funky. The gist of the point that she said, in my opinion, is that like it just might be the case that everyone stops working because there's no need to. So do people think that that would happen as a result of universal basic income being introduced?
Yeah, that's it. So we're trying to understand if people work or not on the system of universal basic income. I think it's important to look at the lab test because I discussed it before. The idea that they're doing these kind of localized testing on ideas if it would work in that area, and I've talked about how it's pretty much over doubled during coronavirus. So I think it's gone up by 15 now in the UK. So it's 24 labs in the UK, and they're all looking at, for example, in Cardiff, how it would impact the local area, would people stop working as much, etc. And that being said, there's also been a big test in Finland recently. I think it was a 2-year test, and they found that there was an improvement to mental health, confidence in your own health in terms of memory and general performance, but also there was a minor increase. They made it clear it was a minor increase in people wanting to work and getting back to work. And that actually gave Nicola Sturgeon the confidence to say that it might be time to have it. But I think it's important to look at these tests and not to rush into just applying it. Because we can sit here and talk all day, well, I know this personally would work, I personally work, but I don't think you can tell by theory or principle. I think we need to say, oh, let's give it a year or two and see what the impact is, and then see how continuing it or changing it a bit.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I do agree with that. That's a very good way to go about doing it. Would you say that if it turned out that through the tests that a lot of people weren't working, but it was still economically like sustainable, would you be like cool with that being how society is?
Yeah, it's obviously it's all theoretical, so I can't make any
Yeah.
certain points. But I think it depends on the other impacts. If it's, for example, better than universal credit, because there is an argument that not only about the kind of encouraging to get back to work, but just for simplicity, because universal credit is so complicated, and people aren't always getting payments on time, and it's really difficult to register for. Some people get quite a lot for no reason, so they get hardly any when they need it. So this could actually be a much more simpler and probably economically more cost-effective system to use. So it depends on those impacts as well. But yeah, I wouldn't judge it just for the primary principle of getting people back to work. There's other aspects of the measure as well. Really.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, there's like a billion different factors that like influence it, which means it's quite tricky to deal with them. But I guess the way that you're talking about it as being like, just try it kind of thing. I guess that's the other thing.
Sorry, I'll say quickly. Like, I've been listening to the Lib Dem debates running up to the leadership election for them, which is now Ed Davey, and he talked a lot about his idea of universal basic income, and his idea is to create a kind of sovereign wealth fund out of the coronavirus loans. So the loans that companies have had, rather than having to pay them back to the government, they could use them to exchange them for shares in a universal basic income kind of pocket, if you like. We could all share out a big pot. So the idea is that actually this could be the right time to do it because there's a big amount of debt that needs to be exchanged and used up and funded somehow. So in some ways, I feel like this is the right time to do it for a year or two.
Yeah, that does make sense. The other thing that I was going to say was that like there are a lot of just straight up instant benefits, like it being so much easier than universal credit, but then a lot of them, especially the economic ones, you can only tell if they're going to work in the long term because it's a lot of things. Like, for example, people argue that it would decrease crime because you don't need to rely on crime, and if it's like £50,000 a year to keep someone in prison, then that's a lot less than £12,000 a year to like just keep them happy. And so there's tons of stuff like that, which is a bit tricky. And I guess it also combines with like with Black Lives Matter and stuff, and like defunding the prisons, and there's just like a billion things that keep mixing up together. There's a couple more like ethics questions. That was the big one, actually. Yeah, we'll go on to the second one. So another thing that like prompts universal basic income to be like talked about is the whole idea of like automating with robots and stuff, manual labour. So it's quite interesting because like there are just a lot of tasks that can be done by robots but aren't currently. And so the first one is like, so just take like someone who works at McDonald's or something, and the tasks that you're doing there do not require human intelligence. So there is sometimes an incentive for employers to use robots because they're cheaper than people, and also like don't go on sick leave and stuff. So do we think that there should be like a tax for using machines and stuff because it's putting people out of jobs? So like, or the opposite of that, like incentivizing not automating tasks. So like if a factory uses people and gives society jobs, then they should be benefited rather than hindered by that kind of thing.
I'll go there. I think, well, personally, I'm kind of really anti-mechanization because of the impact on. Yeah, I just don't think we should entrust the idea of giving private companies and even public sector really that much power over. Because I feel like, okay, the population's reducing over time, but the impact of taking away so many jobs so quickly because technology advances much more rapidly than human changes would just be catastrophic. So my opinion there would be it wouldn't work alongside it, even though you might have a few people on universal basic income while there's less jobs available. That job market will continue to shrink even if it is there. So I think they should keep as many jobs as they can. Really, I don't think there's any benefit to society.
That's interesting. That is interesting because I guess like this is the other like deep question that like. Oh, it's hard to put into words. Like, because the way that like people talking about automation and stuff, it came across to me like it was something that should be incentivized, the automation of tasks, and just like exponential, getting rid of stuff that you don't want to do, and that kind of prioritizes, and like means that a lot more people are doing more highly qualified jobs. Would that make people happier if like you could live and not, so it's the kind of, it's either you can survive by doing manual labour jobs or like those kind of jobs, or you can not need to work and then like study more or do other things to get qualifications and then get a more qualified job or something? Would that be preferable? I'm guessing you don't think it is. I don't know.
I mean, the fact that you'd have more time to study and gain higher qualifications for a higher qualified job just goes to show how much the job market would shrink and how much that you'd have to have more and more qualifications. Like we've seen it with universities now. I mean, the more and more people go to university because the incentive that they need to for higher paying jobs means that actually degrees are becoming more and more useless. They're becoming inflated, and actually the idea of it is just, I think it puts too much pressure on one solution to a problem that it just, when actually problems are so much more complex, they need multiple solutions to solve that. So I think it's kind of, I don't mean this in a harsh way, but we have a variety of levels in society where different people are suited to different tasks. And if you're expecting people increasingly to only go for the higher paying jobs where they need higher qualifications, then people who aren't suited to that are going to suffer mostly as a result of that. So over time, they'll be shrinking as a population. You could argue that with universal education that would be solved, but I don't think we're there yet. It's a long game, really. But ultimately, I think if you're prioritising the mechanisation, you're prioritising the consumer side of the balance in society between consumer and worker, because ultimately they'll gain the most at the expense of the other side. So I think you've got to be careful with it, really.
That's fair. I don't know how practical this is, or like whether it would happen, or if we can even debate whether or not it would happen and stuff. Just a point that someone brought up about this whole thing was that like there are certain jobs, for example waitering, you can't like really be qualified in that. I mean, obviously you can, as in like having lots of experience and things, but that's like a job that no one would really want to be replaced by a robot, because that's just worse than talking to a human. So I guess what they say by like increasing automation is that those jobs like waitering and stuff where you're talking to people and like receptionists and things, they'd get like more, they could be like, what am I trying to say? They're like, they'd be more valuable, so that, and then like people would use them more because oh my god, right, it would just be like there's no alternative and employers really want them, so those jobs would be paid better, and like the experience of them would have to be better in order for people to actually do them, because the alternative would just be not working. So, and that's the other thing, that like because there's no risk of just not getting a job, that means that people who want a job can be more assertive with like getting more flexible hours and things. But there's too much to think about with all of this, because it's all hypothetical. I don't really know what like end goal universal basic income would result in, obviously, because no one does, or what one we'd want it to be. Because like there are certain situations where universal, where like not working is good. So for example, if you were a parent and you wanted to spend lots of time with your kids and you only did like a few shifts every now and then, that would be better because you'd have more time with your kids and you wouldn't need to rely on work and stuff. And then also like students, because they'd be able to spend more time studying and stuff, and but then some people would just have nothing to do, and it's clear that working gives you a purpose and stuff. So I've kind of exploded my mind a bit with all of this because there's so many factors. Okay. Unless anyone has anything else to say about like automation and stuff, then I think I'm going to move on because it's kind of exploded my mind. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
It'd just be interesting to mention, as I usually do on these episodes, is has anyone seen the episode of the Joe Rogan podcast where he interviews Andrew Yang?
I saw a piece of it, but not much.
Possibly, I can't remember which
Because
one.
there he exactly talks about universal basic income, because I think that was one of the main parts known about him as a candidate.
Yeah.
And then he also does go into automation as well. And I think he brings up sort of, similar points to you guys, and how people want to stay with universal basic income. Oh, no one will want to work, but we sort of seem to forget the idea that we like the idea of doing things for ourselves and earning our own money.
Yeah.
And the fact that we'd want to live outside of just the basic income, it's the idea is that it gives you enough to have, a stable sort of life, but you'll just sort of naturally want to do more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And that's the vibe a lot of people get from benefits, I suppose. That is interesting. I should definitely have a listen to that. Joe Rogan is very sexy. Right, next thing about universal basic income. What on earth do you do about migrants and immigrants? Just one thing. It's not going to affect us, unfortunately. The EU has a policy that means that migrants from other countries, it's like you just can't treat them differently to like a normal citizen, and obviously you can see what that would mean for universal basic income. Is that a thing that is that a factor that we should be worried about, just like having an influx of everyone coming in and seeking it? And if so, would there be something that we do about immigration to like mean that only certain people can come in, or you can only get it after a bit or something?
That's a really difficult discussion to have. I mean, we talked, I think in debate club, was it, about the idea of the new points-based system that's coming in with Boris Johnson's government, and I suppose if you work along those lines, then you could apply it to everyone, because the workers coming in will be a small amount of immigrants. So it's not exactly that much to cost the British people. And it probably would cost effective, because it would encourage them to grow and take on bigger challenges within the economy, which push our economy further. So it probably would work quite well with that. But then if you apply it to everyone, that's where it starts to get tricky. Can we afford it? To what extent would it apply to refugees as well, or are they only temporary? Are they citizens and stuff? I mean, I can't make a certain comment on this. My initial thinking is a period of time kind of idea. That's what's thrown around, like the idea of the NHS now, like where you don't overtax them. You treat them as like kind of an entry level citizen on like a kind of process to becoming a full citizenship. That kind of idea, where they're not heavily charged, but exactly not heavily benefited either. And then after time they earn their kind of citizenship and they get all the rights as well as that. But I haven't looked into the details of that, so I can't say any further. But that's my initial thinking on it.
Okay, that's interesting. That I suppose that would, on the face of it, it sounds like a really good way of dealing with it. Although I'm sure someone would have a counter to that. I wasn't there for the points-based thing, and I haven't heard about it in any other thing. Would you explain it for little of me, please?
So points-based system is I don't know the details. Basically, you have to score a certain amount. It's like applying to uni actually. With grades. You have to score points based on whether you've got a confirmed job, what kind of qualifications you got, stuff like that. What kind of job you do, and if you hit the right boxes, you earn points. The more points you earn, you are more likely to enter. And you have to hit a certain threshold. I don't know what it is, but ideally, if you're a mechanical engineer who's already got a job confirmed, you're probably coming in. But if you're a kind of unqualified person that's not got a job confirmed, you might not get in. That's the whole basis of it. So basically, people who will benefit the economy and take it further come straight in. That's what I do.
Okay. Does it say anything about like kids and stuff? Because obviously you wouldn't expect a kid to have a qualification, but then equally they can get qualifications and stuff. So, and also just, I mean, you can't generalise it to people who just don't have qualifications. But yeah, what about kids?
I think kids, if they're part of a family, and say the parents are the ones moving over, then it's fair game. other than that, I don't think kids can come over by themselves. So, I mean, that's it. I think it depends whether the kids are part of the family or not. I don't think you can say, like, and assess a 14-year-old if they got enough qualifications to enter the country. They'll probably phone the local police and why is a 14-year-old trying to enter by themselves. But
Yes. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. That does seem quite good, but then I guess it ignores the idea that like certain people don't have any qualifications, but then could get qualifications because obviously people in the UK do that as well. So, but I guess that there's not very much you can do about that unless you just don't have a points-based system. But
we did have a discussion, and we had a kind of consensus towards the end. But it would be a good system for Britain to take to benefit Britain. But we all kind of agree there needs to become some kind of wealth going back towards those countries. So say like Iraq has a mechanical engineer who's got a job here, so that person moves from that economy over to ours. That takes away from the Iraqi economy. So we all agree that there needs to be some kind of foreign aid increase or investment trade deals where the wealth flows both ways, not just one. So you're not just stripping other countries of all their great learned people, you're actually giving some of it back to them. That was the idea we floated around. We don't know exactly how we go into that. That's policy discussions. We're not going in there. Yeah.
okay, that's quite a good idea actually. And that's quite a relevant one as far as universal basic income, because actually no, it's more automation. I haven't written notes about this, but one of the things that they said about as far as just automating everything, if you did that in a developing country where like the countries are developing because there is a factory there that's giving people jobs and stuff, and then if you automated it all, obviously they don't have jobs and stuff. Do we think that like, because you've already explained that you don't want automation to be a massive thing, and I guess your opinion would be the same applying to that as well in developing countries?
I mean, not saying I don't want it to be like a big thing. I don't think we should actively encourage it and replace all jobs. But like, I think at the end of the day, the government shouldn't say, "Oh no, let's ban such and such machines." But they are quite useful, especially in developing countries. I think they do need more mechanization. That's not like I can contradict myself. But give me a chance, because the benefits are, say, like, because the kind of mechanization I think is beneficial. Is say you've got, for example, farming. It'd be useless about mechanization at the moment. You need machines that can plough a field in an hour as opposed to one horse and a plough that would take you maybe a couple of days. That's the kind of change I'm talking about. Some things that help humans beyond their capability or strength or what tools they originally had. But the kind of mechanization I'm opposed to is basic tasks where we're perfectly capable, like McDonald's, handing food over the counter. I mean, we are capable of doing that, and with quite a good speed. If you go to McDonald's, you'll get food within 2 to 10 minutes. And the only fault I have with McDonald's is drive-through, but that's it. So I don't think there's you don't need to it's not with farming where there needed to be much mechanization. We don't need McDonald's to pump out food in 30 seconds like with a robot. So, but in developing countries, we're all right. I think that's where the investment needs to go. But then again, there is a whole argument of I can't remember what it's called, but the idea that it's a bit insulting to just send things over from developed countries. I covered this in GCSE geography, like the ideas of, let's just send 500 tractors to Africa, and it will go to like Kenya or Uganda, and then there's people in villages over there like, well, what am I going to do with this? It's useless, or like a combine harvester, they don't even harvest wheat or anything. It's like, okay, so that you have to be careful with it. You can't just throw stuff at them. It's like, here's my great investment, but it has to be thought about. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that.
I have to go in a moment, but I think that also goes with the idea of, isn't it, like, give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, and he'll be able to feed himself. Because if you just throw some machines at them and then teach them how to use it, and then go away, that isn't exactly the most sustainable thing. It's kind of like, well, we've done the bare minimum. We've given you something to help. Now, good luck. Bye. That's not exactly useful.
Yes.
True, I agree. And it's like similar criticism with money as well, because there's a lot of
Yes,
arguments.
if we throw money at the problem, it will get solved automatically, obviously.
And the
That's
reason for this is that in Africa, it's actually made things worse because there's now localized corruption. I mean, I watched a Louis Theroux documentary on Uganda, yeah, I think it was, and they were looking at how the trade unions are now like gangs in local areas because they often get investment money that goes down the pipeline through the system, and so now they're just corrupt and they run corners and sell drugs or make sure people have to pay to get jobs and things. It's like you can't just throw things. It's got to be thought about. Like, for example, charities actually look at local water supplies and actually think about what's the best way to get cleaner water there. It's not just to build a well. Sometimes it's to divert streams or whatever. You know, that kind of level of thought is what's needed.
Like they can't do anything. It's like actually work with them to sort things out rather than just throwing things at them.
Yeah.
And
Exactly
now
that. Like
I
the
must
best. Go on, go on.
no, I must go, leave.
Oh.
Like,
Okay.
bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Thank you for
See you,
coming.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So the best project I've seen so far that takes this kind of approach is I don't know what it's called, but it's basically across the kind of midsection of Africa where you've got the border of the Sahara Desert. There's like a big project to plant lots of trees along the border, and they basically found that stops the desert expanding further into farmland, and it keeps the land moist enough to enable them to grow food there. And obviously, from then on, it's whatever the local farmers want to do. But it's those kind of initiatives was actually working with the locals and helps a bit more, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole topic's really, really interesting, and we were gonna. We've had a couple of suggestions to talk about this kind of topic, and there's just so much to go into, and corruption and everything. But that trees one's really good because it's the kind of thing that like doesn't really cost as much money as just giving people a load of money, but it means that you can't like be corrupt about it because you can't like. Well, you just can't. There's just nothing you can do. It's just a tree in a desert. So yeah, that's really good. Good way of doing things. I do want to talk about that, but I haven't got any notes about it, and that was the thing that I was going to do next week. So for the sake of like not using this topic to its full potential, I'm going to temporarily take it back to an automation-y thing, and then we can talk about something else. You were saying about like as far as McDonald's and stuff, that like you wouldn't want the giving of a burger to be automated, or just like getting rid of like a receptionist to like just instead of typing in your room number and stuff, and that's really, really bad. Would you say your principle of like, I mean, I'm not asking you for like a definitive answer or anything, but like, do you think that a principle is like that if a human can do it easily, it doesn't like enable us to be extra productive, it just means that a human wouldn't be doing it? That's the time to like not automate it, because like it wouldn't just boost anything, it would just give you more money kind of thing. It wouldn't make a job easier or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of and it's probably not. It probably doesn't need to happen, right? I mean, with these kind of changes, they wouldn't make you that much more money. They make a bit of profit, which obviously business owners are constantly looking for. But I think it's a good example of how you need to strike a fine balance. We live in a kind of consumer society where the base is people need to buy things for it to carry on functioning. We all need to exchange goods and money. So that requires a good balance between the consumer and workers, or kind of communal aspect of society, which inevitably are both the same thing, but we both have different attitudes. So, you know, one day I might be working at work stacking shelves. The next day I might be going in there and buying something. I'm two different people at once, if that makes sense. This is my own theory about it. So I feel like you have to be careful. If it's not actually benefiting either side anyway, it's only really benefiting maybe the consumer a little bit by making it a bit quicker, and it's actually harming the other side quite a bit because it's actually taking away an entire job, then I don't think it's necessary, because there's no help needed. It's not actually going to make a revolutionary change, is it? So
Yeah, that makes sense. That's very clever. Yeah, because like there are so many things that you could do, and it's just like, yeah, it would benefit you like a little bit by giving you like a tinsy bit of extra profit, but the loss of an entire livelihood and stuff is just not a thing that you can trade for it. That's very clever. There are other things that there's just so many jobs. Like I think that the whole like thing when you go into Mackey's, it's got like a little screen, so you don't even have to talk to a person, and then you just collect it. I think that's just so terrible, and like we're so like distant from each other already with our smartphones and things that we can't like, and like self-service checkouts and things. That could be a person helping you, and you could talk to them and stuff, and yeah. There are, I mean, obviously in certain circumstances, some of them can be justified. I can't think of any, but yeah.
I think it's more on the kind of skills base and kind of accuracy and things where we're not capable. So, say in surgery sometimes they might use robotic arms or specific camera lenses where a human eye couldn't see that deep into, a cut or whatever, whereas they use that to do it. Now that kind of says when mechanization is needed, but just to bring food to you is a bit, I can't see how they make that much profit from it really. If you think about these big fast food chains, KFC, McDonald's, whatever, and the profit they're already making and the system how it works, if you're a consumer, it's a pretty good system. The only big negative really is the food quality isn't great, but that's what you're expecting. It's kind of cheap, so just making it quicker isn't necessary, and you're taking away a whole livelihood. That could be, their kids' future. That could be their confidence in themselves. They can have a mental breakdown after that. So I think you have to strike the balance. You really do.
Yes, definitely. The one thing is that would this like fuck up your principle a bit? The fact that like I mean, maybe it doesn't, because it might just be that like you've lost your purpose and stuff. But if like by having automation, you have to have universal basic income at the same time, so the two go hand in hand. So there's no like income insecurity arising from it. If there was, and like if we just like pretend that permanently and forever there's no economic risk of increasing automation, if that's just, and this is theoretical obviously, if that is the case where there's no income risk by doing UBI, because then it's a case of like, is it right to just take someone's purpose away from them but they could do like hobbies and things, but like does that change it as far as, because it's not just that they can't survive anymore, it's just that they have to do something else in those hours of the week?
I mean, it's certainly possible, because if UBI is popular enough and successful enough, inevitably you could make it so there is no working aspect of society, it's purely consumer. So inevitably, this is over a long period of time obviously, but you could make it so the economy is pretty much almost 100% automated, and there's very few jobs, but people are given that wage, so they can spend just as much as they had a job. So inevitably you could do that, but I still think that we can't reduce it purely to economic terms, purely to money and to numbers, because there's more to it. We're becoming more aware of the risk of mental health and things, and I think the risk of taking away that confidence, that independence, and the ambition that people have within them anyway. I feel like inevitably we all have the need to do work or have some purpose in life. If you're only giving 3% of the population a chance to work, and you're telling the rest of them go and study or something else, just go and relax and try and think about things, I don't think it would be beneficial for the mental health, inevitably. I mean, you can't study forever. You can't keep doing degrees over and over. Eventually, something's going to give. You might reach your end limit. You might have done, 2 masters and you can't go any further. And you might want to settle down and find a purpose in life, but it's all taken by automation. So I'm not entirely opposed to it. It's possible. I just think it's healthy for human society to work towards that level of ambition towards purpose, which ultimately is our identity. I like the idea of choosing a job, not having to choose it because of income. I like the idea of I want to be a waiter in a restaurant, or a head waiter, if you like. and you really enjoy that. Something like that. I think that's what we need to work towards the goal.
Okay, that's fair. Because there's kind of like just like a hypothetical end goal that's like, just that like the economy is just self-sustaining and you just get like, say like just lots and lots of money in your income, so that there's just no need to work, and then you can just play tennis all day or do whatever you want all day, or like create art and like consume art and entertain yourself and things. And because it's kind of like people who are in a 9 to 5 and then they go home and just like watch YouTube when they're back and stuff, and that keeps them happy and stuff. And then if you took the job away, then it's just then you're just going to absorb yourself in consumption and not putting out anything into the world. So I don't know what to do about that.
I mean, yeah, you put it right. I like the phrase absorbing yourself in consumption, because you'd be forced to be just a consumer, and I feel it's important to balance within yourself your working aspect and your consuming aspect. If all you're doing all day is eating, drinking, and be merry, I mean, that is quite fun, for 2 weeks off on a holiday, just drinking and eating all day, and maybe reading a good book or something. But for your whole life, it's human nature. You need to feel like you've achieved something, to feel like you've earned something in life, and to take that away is just, I get the whole kind of Marxist vision. I mean, he outlined it quite well in the manifesto with Engels, talking about the idea of what was the exact quote? I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something along the lines of, I can fish in the morning, debate in the evening, or something like that. Basically, you can do whatever you want the whole day, whatever you feel like, because the economy, as you said, is self-sustaining. And I think it's definitely possible. We can work towards that. Technology's there. The economy could go in the right direction, and we can move towards that, especially with universal basic income as a foundation for it. I just feel like it's too damaging. It's one of those paradoxical ideas where a lot of people I've spoken to actually feel this during lockdown, where the idea of wanting to just chill all the time and do what you want sounds really nice. When you're actually doing it, it's not.
Yeah.
A lot of people during lockdown found that I've watched all TV box sets now, I've eaten food all day, and now I feel fat. And then you just lose your purpose. And that's what you need to not keep, but will keep coming back to you, rather.
Yeah. I just want to add that, because I agree on that and everything, and I can think that with universal base, what's it called?
Basic income.
Okay, yeah, that. Some people might just think at the start, okay, well, we don't need to work, and then realize that actually work is what was keeping them going. But at the same time, it's really hard to get out of that mindset after a while, if you know what I mean. Like, it can be hard to get back into the work mindset, though you're not happy just doing nothing all day and maybe just watching Netflix and eating all day. You know that's not like fully like satisfying you and your interests, but at the same time, it's hard to move out of that state of mind once it's started, which is how I can see it going. But I don't know, because I do like the idea of it. I think I was one of the ones that voted no, but I don't think I fully understood what it meant. But now, after this conversation, I think I'm getting it more, and it's kind of like it's a good idea, but also it could be potentially really go like in the opposite of what you'd hope, because like it would be awesome if people had that and then just continued with their interests. And yeah, maybe someone wants to be the chief of like the European Space Agency, or just like the chief, as you said, like the main waiter or whatever, like as long as they're happy, but and with the universal basic income, then they'd be able to achieve that as well, wouldn't they? But I feel like now there's so much stress on us, as people that are about to start in the work industry thing, to aim as high as we can, because we're worried about money. We're worried about what could happen to us if we didn't achieve that the best, you know.
Yeah.
So it would be a lot of, like, you know, relief on people's mental health as well, if we could have that. But some people might just like, you know, not want to go forward and achieve more of that.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but if everyone does that, it's not so good.
Yeah. I think that's really deep, and I mean that word genuinely, because that is really interesting. Because, like, just thinking about all the things you were saying as far as what would happen with universal basic income, it just seems like exactly what happened with lockdown, as in, like, getting furloughed. That's basically just getting your income. And a load of people, so, like, some people have been like, oh, now I'm not working, I realise that I don't miss it, and now I'm doing all these other things, and it's really helped me. And I guess they felt that because they've got, like, some other motivation to do something else. But then some people will get on furlough, and then they won't have that motivation, and they just will do the other things that you said about. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting to say that, because I come from my mum and dad, both key workers. They were working all the way through, but quite a few of my other members of my family, they were all on furlough. And is my mum and dad would just come home all the time and moan about the fact that they were at home and getting paid more than them as well, and they would just moan about it. And I think I was quite lucky because of that, because I actually could not sit and do nothing, knowing that my mum and dad were coming in later at the same schedule. So it actually made me work more. And kind of, I was doing essay competitions and things to keep my mind busy because I couldn't cope with it. And I feel like it is beneficial if you have other people around you who are still working towards their goals. I just think the main benefit of universal basic income is it takes away those pressures and transforms them from kind of economic ones, which could potentially be quite harmful. You know, losing your job and maybe becoming homeless or losing everything, risks of social relationships breaking down because of that, etc. It takes away them, and I think the main benefit is it could transform them into something more bearable. Because you could be, if you're economically stable, chances are you'll be more socially stable, so you're more comfortable taking risks. And that's why I think universal basic income is a form of weaker socialism, maybe, that could be really beneficial for capitalism in solving its main problems. Because I've always thought this, capitalism's main problem is the kind of increase in inequality, if you like. Over time, inevitably, inequality increases to the point where the poorer group enters poverty. You know, it's not just poorer, it literally enters poverty. That's the main problem. If you set a standard line for everyone, where they're all at a level of comfortable living, they may be poorer, but at least they're comfortable to take risks to push themselves further. You know, I think so many benefits. Like my dad, he started out as a farmer and found it really hard to get work, and he always wanted to be a plumber, but he could never afford to invest in that. And it's only 10 years ago, when he's in his 30s, where he managed to try and get his business off the ground after so much loss. And now he has quite a successful business, but he could have done that in his 20s with universal basic income, you know, and there would have been so much benefit there. So I think it's just that launch pad, and it could be, with capitalism, I think it could be so beneficial to encourage people to develop an ambition within themselves and go further.
Yes. That's really, really interesting. It's really cool, because just thinking about it, it's like, just going from, like, my experience of lockdown and furlough and things, I didn't work very often, but because it was college and work, it seemed like it was very, very busy. So going from all of that to then nothing at all, it was like a few weeks of just consuming and not really outputting much and not really working hard and that kind of thing. But then a few weeks in, that kind of got old, and I didn't really like the fact that I wasn't outputting anything, and I didn't like that I was just receiving information, and then I started doing things like setting up the podcast and stuff, because that filled a gap in my life that was like I'm just not doing anything and I want to do things. And I guess with universal basic income, the cool good bit is that like it doesn't matter how long you just receive and consume for, because there's no economic or social negative of that. So you can just do that for as long as you want, and then when you find motivation to do your own thing, like set up a podcast or start studying for something, then you can, and that's better than being forced into do that because you have to, because if you don't, then you'll just not be able to survive, kind of thing. So I guess I don't know how idealistic that is, but from my perspective it seems like that's a thing. Is that a thing?
It's a good work, yeah. Yeah, it's like a thing, yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. I'm just purely just genuinely interested as far as like going from doing lots of work with college to nothing. I suppose it's not the same for you, Izzy, because you've had online lessons and things, but maybe you can compare it to like breaking up and stuff.
Yeah, honestly, because it was really weird, and I think that everybody experienced it in a different way. As, for example, okay, I was really like motivated, honestly, like the first couple months, and then it got to June, and I took a week off because I was ahead in everything, which was the worst thing I could have done. Because
is this while you were having online lessons, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And it just kind of went downhill from there, and then obviously the motivation as well to like keep up on everything. And then it gets stressful because you know that you've got to be on top of everything, because I've got my mocks soon, or even like the teachers are gonna have like your predicted grades in like the application and things. So it's all very stressful. Or like, for example, a good friend of mine, she on the other hand was she didn't, when, because I feel like some people might have been asked also by their families as well, knowing that they were home. I think their families maybe thought that they had more free time as well, so asked them like to be like more help the family out more, or have more responsibilities income wise as well, because obviously not enough income maybe is coming in from quarantine, so even to get like little jobs or whatever. She had a totally different experience from mine, and she's like an A-star student, and she got so stressed out. Probably, I think what happened was she kind of didn't do the first month and then just got left behind, and obviously that's so overwhelming then to like pick up and know that you've got loads of things to be doing. So I think honestly I'm pretty lucky to have been in the fortunate thing where I was fine motivation wise, and nobody really asked me to do anything at home. But I feel like people were in like worse situations than mine, and yeah, so I just like feel bad for them. Like I'm already feeling stressed out, let alone people that didn't do any work. So I'm sure it'll be fine. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's come back to a lot of things that like, because this is just general day-to-day things, nothing about furlough or anything like that. Just when I guess that I was thinking it mostly during college, but also like after a couple of weeks, if I was studying, I'd study like a little bit, and then if I just like went on YouTube for a little bit and just relaxed and stuff, I'd kind of feel bad about doing that and just receiving, and I felt like there was that by doing that it was not enough and that kind of thing. And I don't know if it's that like, so universal basic income kicks in, you spend a certain amount of time just receiving and chilling and being out with your friends and stuff. I don't know if the point of like motivation comes up when you, because like whilst you're consuming and stuff, you're probably going to be feeling all right, and it's going to be like, oh, this is really chill and I'm happy. And then it's only when you become unhappy and unfulfilled by it that then you get your motivation to like do something more. So it's kind of like, because that's quite a privileged thing to be in, that like you think of it as like rich people, they like if they've got all their money from their parents and stuff and they can live a comfortable life without having to work, they're like happy for a little bit, but then sometimes they get unhappy and then they want to like break free from all of the support and stuff. And it's kind of similar to that, but I don't know if that's, I guess that's better, but then it's just kind of human nature-y kind of stuff and motivation and things. I guess if it keeps people out of jail and of like not being able to eat and stuff, then it's better. And I guess because the motivation comes from, instead of like necessity and I'm literally just not going to be able to eat if I don't do this thing, it's either that or I'm unhappy with my situation and I want to improve it. So that's kind of like a really, I think that is better, and I think people would prefer that. And it's kind of a bit of like comparing that to like a poor country, they'd see that as being like, oh my god, you're so privileged, how can you just not do anything and stuff. And it's, yeah, because that's what I sometimes think about when I'm like not doing stuff, that like if someone from a poor country was in my situation, they'd be so much more hardworking and motivated, that because they've like had to be, that they'd like be better and stuff, and that's the kind of standard that I should have. But I don't know, that's getting way too deep now. Yeah. Is it, I guess this is the question that I always come back to when I think about like YouTube and stuff. Because I'm watching a YouTube video, and whilst I'm doing it, I'm like, I'm happy and I'm getting the dopamine fix and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is that like, and like whilst you're watching the video, you don't feel unfulfilled. You just like feel pretty good. Is that like something that we should like what's the opposite of incentivize? That's what I'm trying to say. Like, should we like try and encourage people not to do that? Because what doing that would be is giving some people another kind of motivation, because it's like, stop watching YouTube, you should, because it's bad, or is it bad? I guess that's the question.
I mean, I feel like it's the same as cigarettes and alcohol, really. You kind of need a warning there to let people be responsible. Because the thing is, with social media and YouTube, it does seem to be more and more clear that, like you say, it's a quick dopamine fix sometimes. Like, I'm the same. I constantly watch cooking videos on my phone when I want a little break from my work, but sometimes it goes from just 10 minutes to 30 minutes. I'm like, where's that time gone? It's just so good at distracting you and keeping you focused on something you don't even realise. But then again, it's not a bad thing in moderation, like anything. You know, you can always have a pint of beer on a Friday night, maybe more than one, but as long as you're not depending on it. So I think you just need to be aware of it and be careful, and help definitely needs to be there for people who are.
Yeah. Like, honestly, I think that the worst thing that I can do when I'm studying is when I take a break, go onto social media or YouTube or whatever, because honestly, like, I know it's my break, but I won't go back to studying, especially not with the same mindset and like, you know. So I think that and it's really hard, you know, because people are used to it, and you know, you want to catch up with what's going on and everything in that maybe hour or 2 hours where you've just been head down studying. But so it's really hard to like push yourself to not do that, to not go on social media or YouTube or whatever. But I think the best thing to do is like really set a routine, maybe even fill your breaks with something to do, or because, and then just, you know, like maybe the evening or whatever, when you've done like everything that you wanted to achieve that day, to like just sit down and, you know, relax.
Yeah.
It's like that, you know, the 9 to 5 job that we were talking about, where you then get back and you've done and you're happy because you can just like finally relax,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it really connects back to the kind of, you know, human roots, where like our human nature is mainly built on the longest period of time of our development, which is hunter-gatherer, and the idea that a day was spent trying to get, you know, forage for berries or whatever and try and get meat, and you use the energy to do it, and then a day you feel tired and you feel that satisfaction of
Yeah.
achieving something. That still carries through all the way to today. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to try and stay in touch with that, because it's something that you can't always change human nature. You have to work with it. So the idea of just doing nothing, like when we're talking about it, it kind of made me think of history. I can't really think of many people in history who reached a point where they were so wealthy they could do nothing. You know, there's definitely some examples that people have, but a lot of them, you know, for example, 1700s, where French aristocracy and European aristocracy was so rich they could do what they wanted and they were so well fed, they started learning things and researching science, and then you got, you know, philosophers and people doing that stuff. And there's just so many examples where they start, or even politics or money. The Medici, for example, they never stopped to their bank. They carried on making more and more money, and eventually got into marriage into royal families. And so, you know, there's always further to go. And I feel like even if they've achieved their certain, like the first lot of goals, there's still an ambition to go further, rather than just sit there and do nothing. It's just most people, I don't think, are content with that.
Yeah.
I've got to go, by the way.
Oh.
I've got to go cook tea.
That's fair. Okay. But yeah, all that stuff that you just said was like really, really interesting and very deep. And I think we need to talk about it on another one so we can delve more into it. And I think because I had a load of stuff about technology addictions that was just fusing so well into what you were saying. But that's for a different episode. So yeah, Sam's got to get some yummy tea because he's melted his brain from being so woke.
Sorry, I've got to go.
Thank you everyone for coming. Not just the people who are in here now, but everyone else, because all of you are very woke, and that got so fucking deep just then, and that's a very good sign because it shows how woke you all are. But yeah, thank you, genuinely thank you all very, very much for coming because it's been really fun and woke. So yeah, bye bye. Really, that's it. Really, yeah.
Thank you.
Very much. Great podcasts, always enjoyable.
Yep.
Good stuff. Links to like social media that anyone's wanted to promote will be in the description as usual. But yeah, bye bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Okay.
Bye.